back to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
I'm Michael LaRosa.
And MSNBC's Rachel Maddow is reportedly furious with Morning Joe hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski for visiting President-elect Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago after his election win. The duo claimed the trip was to restart communications, but it sparked backlash and a ratings dip, leaving Maddow seething, per the U.S. Sun. Here's YouTuber Tim Pool reacting to this news.
Let's jump to this story from the post-millennial chaos at MSNBC as Rachel Maddow furious at Morning Joe hosts for meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, according to a report. Rachel Maddow is pissed at them, and as are other presenters like Chris Hayes and Ari Melber. Not only that, but MSNBC is, once again, suffering its worst ever ratings, hitting a key demographic viewership of 38,000.
Oh.
So it's funny because Rachel Maddow is getting paid $25 million to talk to nobody. So I don't know what's going on with MSNBC, why it matters, but I will say for us, what matters is this is the downward spiral. You got Keith Olbermann came out and said Rachel Maddow sold out her principles for $25 million. That's wild to me. And now she's going after Morning Joe because they're trying, in fear, I might add, but to try and apologize, I guess, to Trump.
So Tim Pool calls it the downward spiral. I refer to it as the pivot to dust when a media company just becomes nothing. They're in such a bind because their core audience, or who remains to them, are just kind of furious, hysterical, anti-Trump liberals. But there aren't enough of those people. There's still millions of them, but not so many of them to be profitable and successful. So I see what Morning Joe was trying to do in a little bit of an olive branch to Trump. Now I do think it was kind of a craven and cowardly way to do it, so motivated just by fear of ratings. But look, it's not a bad idea in my view to be a little bit more open-minded than they have been in their Trump coverage in the past.
Yeah.
But this shows how that can be a lose-lose strategy because you just infuriate whoever you do have left.
Yeah. And so when I was a producer at MSNBC, Morning Joe was kind of like an island to itself. You had the opinion pages in the morning, the opinion pages in the evening, and you had general news during the day. But Morning Joe was always sort of a place where both sides kind of ignored the lean forward sort of branding of MSNBC, and they were still able to cultivate a lot of Republicans to come on the show, and there was less of a, I guess I would say, look, and even now I think the lines have blurred so much that I can't really, I wasn't able to tell Morning Joe apart from Prime. And the rest of MSNBC, but that wasn't always the case.
Well, telling news coverage and opinion coverage apart from each other, just on cable news in general, has become next to impossible.
And I do hope that Morning Joe, because I do think Joe is Joe and Mika, they're incredibly smart people and they have really insightful things to say, even if you disagree with them. And I don't think that being an appendage to one particular side is actually getting the most out of them. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, I agree with that.
And I do think that what I noticed is that they became very susceptible, at least it seemed, to just the BS and spin coming out of like the Biden campaign and the Biden White House. And they're my former colleagues, but they spent a considerable amount of time attacking like legacy media outlets like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And I know those on the right might not like those outlets, but
you mean especially for asking questions about the state of the Biden campaign?
It was like anything. It was a constant media whining and a conflation about the New York Times Siena polls versus the New York Times, which I think sponsors the poll, but like the reporters and the editorialists aren't doing the freaking polling. And I just didn't understand the willingness to so blindly fall in line with with doing everything the Biden campaign wanted them to say and do, and to trash these legacy media outlets and these reporters and these journalists. Like I was kind of shocked by it.
Yeah, I criticize legacy media outlets a lot of the time for more for some of their opinion coverage and then how they frame some things in the news context. But I know exactly what you're talking about, where they'd be like furious at the New York Times or whoever for just doing reporting on the state of the race or the state of the campaign.
Yeah.
Here's what the poll number said. It's not an endorsement from the media view of the Democrats being behind. It was just reality.
Also, all of a sudden, polls were like bad to look at or talk about as a segment or a subject on cable news, and polls are too early. And this is what we do as producers, or did as producers. We talked about polls all the time. Talking about horse race coverage is nothing new. Hi, welcome to the last 20 years of cable news. I don't understand why all of a sudden polling became bad to talk about. It was like sinful to even talk about polls, according to those in the Twitter left or on the Biden campaign, or every poll was constantly, oh, there's no age issue, or it's too early for polls, and you know.
And now we have the campaign staff admitting that their own internal polls never had Kamala ahead. I believe that came out of the interview on Pod Save America. That internally, they're trying to lower the expectations or the blowback for them having not pulled her over the finish line. And they're saying, we always saw her as behind. But then publicly, they were inducing people like Morning Joe to attack anyone who dared point to the polls that they knew were accurate.
Correct. And they were really, and then Democrats were kind of tying themselves up in knots, trying to justify or rationalize the difference between internal polls and external polls or news media polls. And all the time, it was just, it was kind of, I was so disappointed that some of the pollsters that I really respect weren't really like standing up to my former colleagues on the Biden campaign and then the Harris campaign, because we loved polls 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We were ahead in every poll, I think 250 out of 255 public polls. The Biden campaign, we knew we were going to win because we were ahead at every poll for most of an entire year.
Right.
All of a sudden, polls are bad?
And then every time there was this cycle when there was an erroneous poll like the Seltzer poll that then did have Kamala up, which turned out not to be accurate, but had a good favorable poll, then it was always, oh yeah, this is the poll. This is the one we want to listen to.
Ann Seltzer is the queen of polling. She is the most, accurate, sophisticated, got it right every time. And
whoopsies,
on a lot of platforms like the one we were just discussing. And I always wondered how they were going to justify their coverage after the election if Trump were to win. But there seems to be not a ton of shame because they keep having the same people on, mimicking the same things they always used to say. And, it's kind of interesting to watch and entertaining because of the fact how wrong all of them were for so long and what they would say about these polls. And polls aren't meant to be the be-all and end-all, but, you should know that, right? Yes. They are not predictive. They're instructive, and they're there to guide campaigns and different resources and strategy and how to spend here and how to spend there. And the news coverage, the polls that the news companies take part in and contract, they're there to actually talk about, to see where the race stands. That's not the job of internal polling, but, I don't know. It's been fascinating to me, and I think the lines have been really blurred. And look, I have a lot of friends at MSNBC. It will get better. This is all cyclical, in my opinion. So I disagree with the MSNBC is going over the cliff. I don't think that's true.
They might get bought by Elon Musk. And
this is probably the best thing that ever happened to them from a business standpoint.
You think Trump winning?
Yeah.
That was certainly true last time around. I just wonder if there's too much, like a boy who cried, promise at the end of the war. Now is the time for action. There seems to be, just in general, my read of liberal Democrats right now is more kind of just resignation, is less, we must organize, we must mobilize. Of course, that is going on to some degree, but especially from a media perspective, it seems very like,
Well, the media
this is what the country wanted.
But the media
We lost
shouldn't be
again.
the media shouldn't be doing that in the first place.
Sure.
And this is a great opportunity for Mika and Joe to get back to that island and distinguish themselves on MSNBC and be the convening spot and setting the table for the day the way they used to be. You know, let's take the personal and the emotion out of it and get back to like dialogues and discussions. And they were always really good about that. And so I was fine with what they did. I mean, most journalists want to have, like, if you really care about journalism and you care about accuracy, you do want to have relationships with the people who are in power.
Right, and just represent. I think it's always better. Again, I said that this way. Like to have someone of a different political persuasion on. I think it's good to represent multiple political perspectives. I'm not saying like even to take the opinion or the perspective out of news, because that just really doesn't work. Because everyone does have opinion and perspective.
Yeah.
When they're claiming this is a view from nowhere, well, of course it's a view from somewhere. But you want to make sure you don't get in a bubble where you are only surrounding yourself by the kinds of people we're describing, who are easily duped by feel-good, oh my God, she's so going to win.
And that's what they
polling.
did. They just want to take a nice warm bath every day and have their opinions validated and reassured. And, you know, even the faux journalists who are like actually like columnists or opinion, like try to talk about being journalists, but like, you know, they all love backslapping each other, telling how smart they are. It's like, oh, your piece was so great. You make this great point.
Great piece.
So they're all
Great
just
piece.
agreeing with each other every hour. And I don't even understand why that's compelling television, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think if their audience was very loyal to them, fine. But that must mean they have a ceiling. Because that can't be super compelling television.
Right, I think the answer is that it's not super compelling television. We'll be back with more free media right after this. And also, it is Reason's Webathon week. If you appreciate the journalism we do, your contributions help support that journalism and also this show. We really appreciate it. You can visit Reason.com for more details.